why Germany and France and some of the other European countries are somewhat reluctant to completely support our effort to have a massive sanctions campaign on Russia in order to deter Russia from invading Ukraine. What we would need to do is find other gas supplies, because about 1/3 of the gas that Europe depends upon comes from Russia. This amounts to about 20% of Russia's GDP and almost half of Russia's overall budget. In order to do that, we would have to divert supplies of gas from countries in the Middle East, and also some gas would have to come from the United States. So, for instance, the U.S. and the Biden administration are working with our closest allies in the Middle East in order to come up with an alternative gas supply for Europe if Europe is cut off from gas from Russia. That includes countries like Qatar, which has an LNG plant and would be able to provide some of the shortfall that Europe would face.
Europe currently in the middle of an energy crisis already. What would Russia cutting off their supply do to them? And you mentioned some gas could come from here. We're already up $1 a gallon in the last year. Could it somehow impact our gas prices?
It's not clear how it would impact gas prices. And certainly if the entire Russian supply comes off system to Europe, we can expect that gas supplies are going to go up. But how much will depend on how quickly we're able to respond with alternative gas supplies to Europe. This is a crucial issue for Europe, so the U.S. and Europe need to work on it very closely.
So taking a look at the bigger picture here, not just in Europe, if Russia were to invade, how would that alter the supply of energy globally?
Well, I think if Russia is going to invade and the U.S. leads an effort to have a massive sanctions campaign, and that sanctions campaign includes sanctions on all of Russia's state-owned companies that are involved in the supply of gas and other oil-related products to the world, and that is going to, hurt the supply, and that's going to be very difficult for the countries to respond to. And that's why we need our Middle Eastern partners to work closely with us on making up that shortfall. But prices certainly are going to go up, but most importantly, it's going to be significantly damaging to the Russian economy because of their dependence on oil exports for revenues.
Conversely, those sanctions that you mentioned that Secretary of State Antony Blinken has withheld at this point, how impactful would they be on the Russian economy if, in fact, we decide to move forward?
I think they are going to be pretty significant. Putin is already facing, a lot of dissension at home because the economy is not doing well. This would really tip them towards, economic collapse. But the problem is Putin is also insulated from the opinions of the people in Russia, because Russia is basically a police state. There is not a lot of political opposition in Russia. So he doesn't care as much about that as a leader of a democracy would care. He cares more about just ensuring that he stays in power. And his second priority is to make sure that there are not democracies on the border of Russia that serve as a model for the people on how they could have better lives and better quality of life. That's really what his objective is in Ukraine. He wants to meddle with Ukraine, make it unstable, and ensure that it's not a democracy that is cooperating with the West right on his western border. And that's why he's doing this.
David, what's your expectation? Do you think they invade?
I don't think anyone knows what they're going to do, and I don't think even Putin has decided for sure yet. He's testing where the weaknesses are and what the response will be. So whether they invade or not will depend upon whether the U.S. and Europe are able to come up with sufficient deterrence so that Putin recognizes that the costs of invading far outweigh the benefits.
Hard to imagine the most macho world leader on the planet just turning these tanks around without gaining something. That would be hard to believe, as we all know at this point, but it should be interesting. Thank you.
All right, partner at Art Fox and the former rule of law coordinator in Iraq, David Tafuri, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.